Hey everyone and welcome to Storytime. My name is Jake and today we are going to be looking at the subreddit r/choosingbeggars. So sit back, relax and enjoy some funny Reddit stories. Choosing beggars come to a wedding they weren't invited to, then complain about everything. In November 2016, my stepbrother and sister-in-law tied the knot. I didn't attend the wedding as I had work commitments, but my dad told me the gory details of the mess that went down. Just 3 days before the wedding, my stepmom received a call from one of her sisters, Seema, name changed, telling her that Seema's husband's cousin, we'll call her Bloodsucker, and her husband, who we'll call Brickbrains, would love to come to the wedding, and would stepmom and my dad please invite them as well. At first, my stepmom tried to refuse, but Seema begged her. She told my stepmom that Bloodsucker had been on her case for days. She felt entitled to an invitation as she and her family lived in the same city as the bride and groom's family. To save her sister's sanity, my stepmom agreed to talk to my dad. My dad burst out laughing at the absurdity of the request, but stepmom was able to convince him somehow. So, later that day, Dad and Stepmom spoke to Bloodsucker and Brickbrain on the phone and told them they would be happy to have them at their son's wedding. The fact that my parents agreed to this was insanely generous, but that's never enough for entitled jerks. Let me clarify that we're all Indians and this was a Hindu wedding. These weddings comprise of several ceremonies and can go on for several days. My brother's wedding lasted 3 days. All relatives were to arrive at the hotel the day before day 1 of the ceremonies. So when relatives began pouring in, my parents expected 2 less familiar faces, i.e. Bloodsucker and Brickbrain. What they didn't expect was their 3 adult kids to tag along. That's right, the entitled jerks had brought their kids along to a wedding to which only they were invited. That too after they shamelessly begged. My dad was furious, as were my stepmother and stepbrother. When they confronted Seema about this, she sheepishly said that her husband had asked, ordered, her not to tell my parents about this. Later, Seema's hubby, Parasite, told my dad with a note of glee that he didn't want to spoil the lovely surprise. For those of you who can't wrap their heads around this, the surprise was supposed to be able to meet Bloodsucker and Brickbrain's kids. My dad somehow swallowed his rage for the sake of maintaining peace. One of the ceremonies that is held at day 1 is the Sangeet. Sangeet is just the bride and the groom's families and close friends singing traditional wedding songs, dancing, making jokes about the bride and groom in a wholesome manner, and telling stories about their childhood, etc. When done tastefully, it can be pretty entertaining. Of course, Bloodsucker just had to try to ruin it for my stepmom. The bride and groom are always seated in the front row, along with their parents, so they can watch the performances and whatnot. The other guests who aren't participating in the Sangeet are seated at the rows behind them. As everyone was being seated, Bloodsucker went ahead and sat down right next to my stepbrother. That's where my stepmom was supposed to sit. My stepbrother told her that she was in his mother's seat, but the woman just smiled and said, "Oh, it doesn't matter, she can sit at the end of the row." My dad was about to raise his voice when Parasite somehow had the sense to persuade his cousin to sit in the subsequent row. She had the nerve to look offended as she complied. When the singing and dancing was done, and it was time to tell some fun stories about the couple, Brickbrain decided to hijack the mic, and after congratulating the couple, began a long-winded speech about the importance of family, or something like that, and ended it by announcing that his eldest son had graduated from the Indian Institute of Technology 3 years ago, all because of his wonderful upbringing. Barf. My dad managed to not pull him off the stage by his collar, and when he was finally done, the ceremony continued. On the morning of day 2 of the wedding is the Haldi ceremony. It's basically just applying a turmeric paste on the bride and groom so their bond can be strengthened. Don't ask me to go into details, I really don't know much about this one. Anyway, Bloodsucker had been hounding my stepmom all morning, constantly trying to convince her that there was something wrong with the ceremony that was being organised. My stepmom suffers from anxiety, and this witch just made her more and more nervous. She was so stressed out that when she was about to apply the turmeric paste on her son's face, the bowl containing the paste fell out of her hands. Bloodsucker took this opportunity to rant about how inauspicious this was, and how my stepmom had ruined an important ceremony. My dad had had enough, and told her to be quiet and that her rant was not helping. My stepmom was in tears. She's a very traditional person, and this ceremony was important to her. My dad and stepbro, along with some of his friends, were able to console her. My dad had made up his mind to ask the crazy relatives to leave, but my mum pleaded with him not to. Her reasoning was that she didn't want any bitterness on such a joyous occasion. Exactly how a little bitterness would have been worse than Bloodsucker and Brickbrain's constant interference is beyond my ability to comprehend. Anyway, at dusk of day 2 was the Fira ceremony. This is when the bride and groom circle the fire 7 times as the priest chants mantras. Before the Fira, my dad took Parasite aside and had a word with him. He told that guy that if he heard a peep out of Bloodsucker or Brickbrain before or during the ceremony, he would throw their entire family out. Parasite is actually a bit scared and intimidated by my dad and assures him he would keep his cousin and her husband in check. Thankfully, the Fira ceremony went smoothly and without any drama. Day 3 of the wedding was the Bidai. This is when the bride bids goodbye to her family. This is usually a pretty emotional moment. As my sister-in-law was hugging her mum, her tears flowed, as did some of her makeup. Bloodsucker snickered and told her to fix it quickly if she didn't want to look ugly on her wedding day. My stepbrother told her the bride looks lovely as always, and why doesn't she just go wait in her cab? Later that day, Bloodsucker would whine about how disrespectful my stepbro is to his elders. Oh, and did I mention that at every meal, entitled relatives' kids complained about the food and how it wasn't to their liking? Because they did. Also, as the rooms had been booked at the hotel in accordance with the number of guests invited, my parents had to share their suite with Bloodsucker's daughter. 2 of my stepbrother's best friends had to share their rooms with her sons. Also, Brickbrain tried to taunt my dad for splitting the cost of the wedding with the bride's parents, and not making them pay for all of it. My dad coldly told him to mind his own business. The relatives were supposed to spend the night of day 3 at hotel rooms that they had agreed to before leaving the next morning. However, the entitled circus decided they'd rather crash at my parents' place. When they were told that there wouldn't be enough space as there's only 1 guest room and it wouldn't be big enough for all of them, they had the audacity to suggest that either my parents or stepbro and sister-in-law sleep in the living room to accommodate them. This was the proverbial last straw. My dad told them that they had been nothing but a pain in everybody's neck ever since they had arrived, but they weren't getting their way anymore. And if they didn't want to be humiliated and thrown out like the trash they are, they'd better pick up their bags and leave quietly. They knew my dad meant business and left, with Bloodsucker fake sobbing. My dad also called Parasite immediately after the entitled circus left, and gave him an earful. Bloodsucker, Brickbrain, and their blood are now banned from entering my parents' home, or even contacting them ever again. Simply listening to this story from my dad was infuriating, and emotionally exhausting for me. I can't imagine how my parents and stepbrother actually managed to keep their cool for 3 freaking days. They are some of the most entitled people I've ever heard of. Wow, I'm so glad that they kicked them out of their lives because 3 days is way more than enough. Yard sales bring out the best. This past Saturday, we participated in a town-wide garage sale, and I wanted to share some of my favourite moments. It was your typical 9 to 4 yard sale day, and it was well advertised with a ton of homes participating, so there was a lot of traffic. Our main objective was to declutter our storage spaces of all the baby gear and clothes our kids have grown out of, along with some other household decor items that we weren't using anymore. My wife had the great idea to donate the proceeds from our sale to a charity that we regularly support. So we made a big sign saying that and posted it out front, hoping it would curb some of the lowballing and tire kicking that you typically get. When our neighbours saw this, a few of them jumped at the chance to add to our pile in the name of charity and clearing out some of their junk. My wife took a picture of the whole lot and posted it on some of the local Facebook groups, and the madness began. Here are a few of my favourite choosing beggar moments from the day. A lady messaged us asking if we would bring a specific $5 item she saw on the Facebook post to her in a neighbouring city for her to look at. Yeah, sure lady, we'll put our whole garage sale on hold to take an hour round trip out to you so you can look at, not buy it, and then probably tell us you'd take it for $2. Another lady was haggling the price for a bunch of baby clothes and toys. Typical for garage sales. So we knocked off a couple dollars the already bargained total, but then she hit us with, "What's the best you can do? I'm buying these for a charity." Apparently she hadn't seen our sign, which my wife pointed out and said, "Yeah, you really are buying them for charity." Love her. She paid the first price and left. One of the decor items we were getting rid of was a pair of big metal stars you can hang up. Apparently, they were a hot item online, because after numerous messages about them, my wife had to post that it was first come, first serve, and we were not delivering or holding items. One lady messaged she was on her way over now for the stars, and when she showed up 4 hours later, she gave us the stink eye when we told her they were long gone to one of the other Facebook people who showed up earlier. This one's maybe not a choosing beggar story, but amusing nonetheless. One of my neighbours generously donated a couple big Lego sets that cost him hundreds of dollars new. There was a firm $50 price on them because honestly they were worth a lot more on eBay, but he didn't have room for them anymore and wanted to help out our cause. One guy was trying to get one of the sets for $20. We were firm on the price, but he was hanging around looking at other stuff and talking negatively about it. I guess he was hoping we would cave and take his $20 instead of the losing sale, when another lady who had heard some of its exchange chimed in and said she'd buy the set at full price. The guy was like, "Ooh, wait a minute, I had my eye on that." Sorry pal, sold to the nice lady. Snooze you lose. In a fitting end to the day, it's almost 8 PM. The sale was pretty successful and we are heading out for dinner when a message pops up on my wife's phone. Is the yard sale still going on? I think it's different in the UK. I'm pretty sure we barely ever have yard sales. It's more car boot sales where you just like drive into a field and then sell your stuff there. It's pretty much the same concept, but people are so crazy when it comes to it. They're like, how much is that? And you're like, oh, I could probably sell that for like $10. It's like a $20 item or something. And they're like, I'll give you 50p for it. People expect so low. I worked at the tasting booth in a supermarket. A woman asked me to cook a whole bag of her noodle for her. Few weeks ago, I worked part-time as the staff who cooks noodles at the tasting booth. Noodles were put into small cups. Sometimes people want to eat more, so they walk around the supermarket and pick up another cup after a while. That's totally fine. But then there was this woman. She just stood there and waited for me to cook the noodles, put them into cups, and she ate all of them one by one. Well, there's no rule about how many cups you were allowed to take, so I didn't stop her. After she finished eating around 15 cups of noodles, she asked me to cook another bag. So I did. When I was cooking, she told me to add more salt, and I did. And after I finished cooking, before I put the noodles into cups, she took my fork and started eating directly from the bowl. "The noodles are too soft," she said, after eating a mouthful of noodles. My colleagues and I and some customers watched the woman eat the whole bowl of noodles, then left. So free lunch does exist. In the rare occasion that I'm in a supermarket, I'll see the free cocktail sausages or cheese, and I'll take one, and sometimes there'll be two stuck together, and I'll feel really bad for taking two, so this woman literally has no shame whatsoever. Hey everyone, I hope you all had a really good day and that you enjoyed that video. If you want to check out some other videos, then click on screen right now, or check out the playlist down below. If you enjoyed that video, then please do leave a like. And if you want to submit your own stories, then you can do so by joining the Discord in the top link in the description. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very soon.